The Wild Wasteland is a Fallout nature documentary that I'd always wanted to produce, and as it started, when the series first started, I was the one doing the narration of it, and what you're about to see is when it transformed into the thing that I wanted it to be all along, which was a series narrated by the Storyteller. This is going to be the first season of this series all rolled into one video, and the reason I'm releasing it this way is so that people who may be new to the channel and maybe miss these uploads could see them all at once and get a sense for what the series is. The reason I am uploading it right now is because depending on the success of this and whether people want to see more is going to determine whether or not I continue with making a season 2. It is a passion project of mine, but there's other things that I'm working on that other people are more receptive to. So if this does well and people in the comments say that they like it, I'll be making more. Keep in mind when you are watching these that I am still learning editing as I am doing this series. These are a little bit older. So a lot of this was actually recorded on consoles. It was recorded on Xbox One and then later put into the video. I didn't have the rig that I have now, the PC that I have now, where I would be able to make a much better version of the show. So keep in mind that if I do continue with season 2, the production quality would be much better. So I just want to see what you guys think about it. Enough of my rambling, and this is The Storyteller's Wild Wasteland, a Fallout nature documentary, season 1 in its entirety. The sun rises on the wasteland. Life starts to stir as the day begins. Creatures, large and small, have called the wasteland home for centuries. Human stories have been passed down and lived out in front of our eyes. Little attention, however, is paid to the animals, plants, and terrain of this wild wasteland. I'm Mantis, and this is the Wild Wasteland. Deep in the Commonwealth, things are already starting to buzz. Just outside Lexington, on most days, we can find many.
We'll take it from here, Mantis.
The wasteland has its share of strange creatures, wild plants, and even talking animals. Somehow, despite the destruction caused by the Great War of 2077, wildlife has not only persevered, it has thrived. It could be argued that most species post-war are doing much better than their pre-war counterparts these days, most growing to unbelievable sizes, or even getting strange pseudo-superpowers from the side effects of too much radiation. Edna and I have seen a lot of these creatures up close and personal. That's right, Edna, a little too close sometimes. In this series, I will be bringing you closer to the wildlife of the wasteland, exploring how these creatures live day to day, diving into what made them what they are, and asking questions about their ancestors. Not all of the wasteland's animal life is as social to humans as dogs and cats. I had heard back west that cats were extinct. I guess my source wasn't as reliable as I thought. unless they all have been hiding in the Commonwealth. I had only seen them in old holotapes. Many people hunted cats for food because they were an easy prey, leading to low population. Dogs were spared that fate, though many have turned feral. It is not uncommon to find dogs as companions to humans. Post-war, dogs have grown much larger than their pre-war ancestors and are, for the most part, comparable to pre-war wolves in size. Some dogs have even found themselves ingrained in folklore, like dog meat, the faithful companion of the vault dweller. Life blooms all over the wasteland, even the desert of the Mojave, with its rough dust storms and treacherous mountain ranges, hosts many forms of non-human life. Contrary to what you may believe, it's not all a desert out there. You can even find snow if you look hard enough. The Mojave is home to some of the deadliest creatures known to the wastes. Of course, the whole wasteland is dangerous, but nothing stings like a cazador. Giant mutated tarantula hawk spider wasps, dreamt up in a fever dream by Dr. Boris in the Z14 Pepsinase DNA splicing lab of Big Mountain. These Commonwealth blood bugs don't seem so bad after seeing cazadors. Boston is no stranger to creepy crawlies. Nothing worse than waking up to find that a radroach has stumbled into your food supply. I had to throw out 3 boxes of Dandy Boy apples. These pests extend across the entire wasteland, even down in the capital wasteland. You can still find great American cockroaches that have been mutated by the radiation from the Great War, making life miserable for humans. Tribals have been using the innards of roaches to treat radiation poisoning for decades, so I guess they do serve a purpose. The bigger problem in DC, well, despite the mutants, are the mirelurks. Big, mutated Chesapeake Bay blue crabs that pack a mean pinch. They don't take kindly to people rummaging through their territory and are not afraid to use force to show it. The ones in the capital wasteland don't hold a candle to some of the ones I have seen in the Commonwealth. They make Deathclaws look small. Mirelurks aren't nearly as bad as some of the stories I have heard coming from Appalachia. Now, Edna, that wasn't very country roads of you. I have heard tales of mysterious cryptids and flying beasts. Some of them must hold some weight because they have been passed down from locals since about 2 decades after the Great War. That's a long time. Enough of the old wives' tales. It's time to dust off the old armor, Edna. A small settlement nearby has been having problems with something big, but that is a story for another day. The wasteland is a wild place. For decades, people have managed to eke out their livelihoods from what is salvaged post-war. The hardships of man are nothing new. Day to day, the struggle to survive takes shape in many forms. I'm the Storyteller, and in this series, I'm going to take you closer to flora and fauna in the wasteland than ever before. Edna and I have been all over this vast post-war hellscape, and I still have stories to tell. So grab a Nuka-Cola and sit down for a while as we guide you through the folklore and history behind Fallout's nuclear-powered wildlife. This is the Wild Wasteland.
Seems like an excellent plot of land you got here, stranger. What seems to have you so worked up?
Sure, it's a good area, except I got all these Deathclaws breathing down my ass. They're like a goddamn big man.
Ah, good old Deathclaws. I have seen these before. We'll see if we can scare it off for you. Let's go, Edna. You know, Edna, a lot of folks think Deathclaws are just a big, deadly byproduct of the Great War. And who could blame them? They're damn big monsters. They got teeth as long as your arm, legs as big as tree stumps, and claws that can tear a Corvega in half. So it would not be foolish to assume that the bombs caused the Deathclaws to mutate to this. But that couldn't be further from the truth.
Back before the war, the United States was working on ways to supplement human troops in battle. The military experimented with a lot of different things. They found some great success mixing the ubiquitous Jackson's chameleon, which would eventually become what wastelanders know as the Deathclaw. These chameleons, pre-war, were native to East Africa, but also introduced to Hawaii, Florida, and California. Jackson's chameleons are native to woodlands and forests in south-central Kenya and northern Tanzania. Don't get me wrong, Edna. The military hadn't created the Deathclaws that we see today. No, not by a long shot. Around 2162, it would be the master who would refine the Deathclaws into what we see now. Richard Gray didn't utilize the Deathclaws in any tangible way. He just messed with their DNA until he saw fit. He made them harder, better, faster, and stronger than ever before. The Deathclaw today stands about 10 feet tall, with a very muscular and lean frame. Their skin seems as tough as iron, deflecting most small caliber shots that make contact. At the end of their very long arms sits foot-long claws, capable of slicing flesh with a single swipe. All those experiments warped their senses, too. Not even the fabled nose of dog meat could compete with the Deathclaw when it comes to the smelling of its prey if it doesn't hear it first. They are pretty much blind, though, Edna, so the whole deck isn't stacked against us just yet. Some can still change colors, though, like their pre-war ancestors. That might make things a little more exciting.
They're pretty vocal too, Edna, with a roar that is shocking enough to stop a person in their tracks. Though you might hear a Deathclaw shouting or roaring, they lack the vocal cords necessary to speak. I know what you're thinking, Edna. What about those Deathclaws the chosen one of Arroyo came across in Vault 13?
That was thanks to the Enclave. In 2235, after the Enclave had sent an all-clear signal to Vault 13, the group dropped a unit of Deathclaws into the vault. These Deathclaws had been exposed to the FEV, or Forced Evolutionary Virus, from the Enclave. The virus had strange effects, boosting the intellect of the Deathclaws, most becoming as cognitive as an 8-year-old human child, and some even rivaling adults when it came to intelligence. All logs report that these Deathclaws were highly advanced. They were able to reason with other species, like humans, and even showed abstract thought. You are right, Edna, they did talk, but not the same way people do. Much like the tales of pre-war birds, the Deathclaws would mimic human speech, making their words a little rough around the edges, but they were still able to communicate well. The last holotape I saw about the pack said that they all met a pretty violent end once the Enclave figured out they hadn't been following orders. Instead of killing humans that poked around too close to home or capturing them for the Enclave, they would frequently let them into the vault, allowing the people in the area to find some pretty excellent protection from the elements. Who isn't going to feel safe in a vault filled with smart, friendly Deathclaws?
There she is, Edna. Looks like we might have a fight on our hands. Off to the big Deathclaw sanctuary in the sky. Come on, Edna. Let's tell our friend he won't have to worry about that beast anymore. Hard to believe that people all over the wastes are dealing with these mutated lizards. From coast to coast, the Deathclaws made its home all over the wasteland. They're taking up refuge in old machinery or abandoned mines, waiting for the next meal to start poking around their territory.
Deathclaws have a considerable pack mentality. You may see one walking alone, but they always belong to a pack. I have seen in old holotapes that they are one of the most social creatures when it comes to their species. All around the wasteland, you can find different kinds of Deathclaws. They have a strict hierarchical system with alphas and matriarchs at the top. They will do whatever they can to protect their kin. You may think seeing one of the pack leaders is rare, but there are some Deathclaws out there that are even harder to find. Some like Goris, who was with the pack at Vault 13, are albino, their skin turning pale as snow and the hair on their body turning gray. Those are a sight to see, Edna.
You know, Edna, not every animal has become so dangerous. Humans across the wastes have managed to use some animals to their benefit. Whether it be for companionship, important work, or even dinner, the wildlife can be a great resource to man post-war. It doesn't take long when looking around settlements to see which animals have earned their spot next to humans. People have trained some species to carry their supplies on long trips. They have even found a way to harvest their meat. But that, Edna, is a story for another day.
Hey, stupid! Yes, you! Have you found yourself stranded on a desert island? Pretty thirsty, huh? Why don't you drink a beautiful Nuka-Cola? Nuka-Cola contains all of the essential attributes of liquid, now with fewer rads per serving. So what are you waiting for? Death? Dive into an ice-cold Nuka-Cola today.
What if there was a place with all the zip of Nuka-Cola?
The Wasteland in the Fallout series can be a wild and unforgiving place. You've had many adventures across this great post-apocalyptic nation, and there is no doubt you have encountered the radioactive wildlife that inhabits it. I am the Storyteller, and in this series, I am going to take you closer to the nuclear-powered flora and fauna of the Fallout series than ever before. Diving deep into the folklore and daily lives of the magnificent creatures, plant life, and terrain that this post-war playground has to offer. So grab a Nuka-Cola and your best box of Fancy Lad snack cakes. This is the Wild Wasteland.
Edna and I took care of that Deathclaw problem you had, stranger. You won't be seeing her poking around here anymore.
Thanks, boss. That really helps out around here. She was picking off the damn Brahmin.
Well, I hope you didn't lose too many. They serve quite a purpose. It is a shame to see them end up as Deathclaw chow.
Sure, they could serve a purpose if the damn things did anything. Lazy bastards stopped giving milk and only one of them will haul to the other settlement nearby anymore.
The herd is probably just spooked from the Deathclaw. How about me and Edna tag along on the next run?
Wow, okay. Maybe you can get them motivated. We need to make a run to Great Garden. Of course, you're welcome to tag along if these damn things will get moving.
Well, there is nothing worse than a lazy Brahmin. You can really see how valuable they are when they aren't pulling their weight. You know, Brahmin and their pre-war ancestors have been providing the people around them with a useful service for centuries. Let me tell you, they looked a lot different before the war.
Old holotapes from the pre-war show the Brahmin's ancestor, cattle, were a pretty standard sight before the bombs fell. They were generally raised for meat, hides, and milk. Bovines were an integral part of pre-war life, domesticated over 11,000 years ago. It is easy to see why Brahmin have stood the test of time so well. Reliable, resilient, and social. These magnificent creatures don't seem to be going anywhere anytime soon. The cows before the Great War had a few differences to the Brahmin we see now, most notably the head, with the bovines of the pre-war only having one head. Hard to imagine these beasts with only one head, but some Brahmin today will birth calves that are missing the extra head. On the inside, according to records, pre-war cattle had half the stomachs of today's Brahmin as well, the ancient animals possessing 4 stomachs, while the Brahmin we find now has 8. Can you imagine, Edna? Yeah, what a freak show.
So you're telling me that according to your old tapes, Brahmin used to have one head and be half as hungry?
Yes, something like that.
How does a critter grow an extra head? Pretty neat trick.
I'm glad you asked. The war had a significant effect on a lot of the animals that called America home. After nuclear fire had engulfed the planet in 2077, many different beings had to learn how to survive. Some would adapt and mutate in strange ways. The Brahmin is one of the most extreme cases we see in the wasteland. It is pretty rare to see a two-headed animal. This is a result of the radiation caused by the Great War and a few decades of post-war breeding. We are pretty lucky they are so resilient, too. Brahmin act as the backbone for struggling human settlements across the wasteland. From coast to coast, the effect Brahmin have had on the wastes is pretty hard to miss, helping turn villages into cities with caravan runs and trading from what can be harvested from the animals. Even their droppings prove useful, many farmers using it for campfire fuel and fertilizer. Around 2241, a guy in New Reno even managed to use the fumes from their feces to make a helpful but addictive chem, jet.
Wait a minute. If some guy in New Reno, 2,900 miles from here, invented jet in 2241, 164 years after the Great War, how come we find so much jet locked in containers from before the war, around the old vaults?
Good point. It must be an oversight.
Brahmin meat is considered a delicacy among folks in the wasteland, many people and tribes having their own perfect recipes. Some of the best I've had come out of the Mojave, but everybody has their preference. Their milk, on the other hand, that's a commodity these days. There are a lot of reports that it can cure radiation sickness, which just adds more value to these mutated bovines. Though even stranger stories have been told about big groups of Brahmin out in the wastes, seeming to speak actual words. Yes, Edna, real English words. It seems pretty impossible that these beasts would be able to talk. You never know, though. The wasteland is a big place. Hard to say what is out there. These days, it's more likely you will find Brahmin around settlements, grazing on grass or getting ready for the next job. Some are kept in groups to encourage safe breeding in colonies, though the bulls are kept out of sight when not needed. Much like their female counterparts, a mutation from the Great War left them with a little extra. While Brahmin udders have grown significantly since the war, Brahmin bulls have doubled their manpower, so to speak. Bulls carry 4 testicles, which makes breeding a breeze, but housing them difficult. Thanks to zoos and attractions like Nuka-World, we can see that the mutations that affect the common Brahmin seem to stem out to other species of bovids. African Cape buffaloes brought here have become known as Brahmaluff, with smoother hides and longer horns coming from their ancestors. This group of cattle looks a bit more healthy than their counterparts. Much like traditional Brahmin, Brahmaluff have been used as pack animals with great success, along with their relatives found in the area. The Brahmaluff shorthorn, which mutated from the American bison, hosts a lighter skin tone and offers the same sturdy companionship as any of the other bovines that call the wasteland home. Perhaps the most impressive of the group, the Brahmaluff longhorn, is quite the sight. Mutating from Asian water buffaloes in the area, they don't differ much from the others. Visually, they are pretty impressive. Massive bovines with horns 2 times the size of your arm. You don't want to find yourself on the receiving end of those bad boys.
Well, thanks for the company, stranger. It helped pass the time.
No problem. Edna and I have no problem sharing stories with the people we meet.
Well, it was a big help. Not every day a damn Brotherhood soldier helps you take your Brahmin for a walk.
Think nothing of it. I had some business up here anyways. I keep hearing about these cats in the area.
From what I heard, they were extinct. That doesn't seem to be the case. Figured I would take a look for myself, but that is a story for another day.
Aw, shucks. It seems Mr. Cromwell has bit the dust. Quite a shame. I bet if he would have made it to that beautiful box of Fancy Lad snack cakes, he would have made it. For Fancy Lad snack cakes holds that signature flavor forever. You won't find these cream-filled snacks rotting away. No siree. So grab a box today, unless you want to end up like old Cromwell over here.
The Wasteland in the Fallout series can be a wild and unforgiving place. You've had many adventures across this great post-apocalyptic nation, and there is no doubt you have encountered the radioactive wildlife that inhabits it. I am the Storyteller, and in this series, I am going to take you closer to the nuclear-powered flora and fauna of the Fallout series than ever before, diving deep into the folklore and daily lives of the magnificent creatures, plant life, and terrain that this post-war playground has to offer. So grab a Nuka-Cola and your best box of Fancy Lad snack cakes. This is the Wild Wasteland.
Ah, Diamond City, Edna. The great green jewel of the Commonwealth. Yes, we could stop for some noodles before we leave. Don't worry, I have my eyes on those bad boys too. Don't forget though, Edna, we're here on a mission. Rumor has it, a fellow by the name of Hawthorne has the largest population of cats you can find in this house here.
Most of the information I have seen about cats in old holotapes suggests they were gone a long time ago. That simply isn't the case. Reports of cats in the wasteland go all the way back to 25 years after the Great War. Different breeds of cats were seen wandering the post-war hellscape, hunting for food and finding shelter in the shells of buildings. It's not hard to believe that cats have survived this long on their instincts alone. After all, we're dealing with one of the prolific predators in the animal kingdom. Regardless of size, a determined feline can take down prey many times its own size, which, way back before the war, could be pretty big. Some pre-war cats were as big as a highwayman, and sometimes just as fast. It's strange to think that these small, domesticated furballs have pre-war ancestors that could rip a Brotherhood soldier in half. It's usually the other way around. The war did a whole lot of work on the DNA of many animals, but these cats seem to have stayed the same over time.
Back west, there have been stories of cats, though most people wrote them off as myths. They must have done a pretty good job of hiding out in the wild. Most of what I've heard is rumors, passed down by 100 different people.
Some lady in the den, back in the days of the Chosen One, claimed she had a cat that was hunted for meat. A guy in Broken Hill said he had a cat too, from what I remember of the stories. I seem to remember an old comedian out of New Reno had a bit about a super mutant getting a cat out of a tree. So it is safe to say they are out there, no matter what some people may claim. These days, it's hard to take a step without tripping over a cat. No one is quite sure why they have become so populated, especially in the Commonwealth. I've heard theories that one of the Vault-Tec vaults held a bunch of them. Then one day, it just opened up, and that's why we see so many out and about now. That's all just rumor though, Edna. No one knows for sure. The cats of the post-war live off the land better than they ever did before. Of course, we can still find them populating settlements and staying close to human companions. The bond between humans and these common pets like cats and dogs has stood the test of time. It's likely not to end soon. Cats find comfort in these settlements as humans will widely look after them, providing them with fresh food and water, as well as a protected place to live and sleep. A pretty valuable commodity in the world we call home today. That doesn't mean some cats would rather not be around humans, finding their own way in the world. Cats who choose this life in the wasteland would find themselves calling on primitive instincts to hunt for food like radroaches, mole rats, and birds. A task the cat of the post-war world is equipped to handle. Razor-sharp claws and a mouth full of the most exceptional teeth. A guarantee that dinner will always be on the table.
That's not to say they don't have predators. Cats are still hunted for their meat to this day, even by humans. Most people don't even cook it before they eat it. Works in a pinch for a high-protein snack, and some merchants will buy it off you for a reasonable price. No, Edna, you won't find me hunting cats. That doesn't mean I haven't been fed the meat, though. Desperate times call for desperate measures. Well, all this talk about food isn't making those noodles any less appealing. What do you say, Edna? Let's go grab a bowl from Takahashi at Power Noodles. I'm starving. Maybe I'll tell you another joke while we eat. Ha! Good one, Edna. That reminds me of some of the stories we heard out in the Mojave, or that time we ran into that nest of cazadors.
I will never forget it either, Edna. Those big wasps packed quite a punch. We were woozy for days after that little run-in. You know, Edna, the Cazador has quite a unique story. One of the most exciting origin tales in the wasteland. But that, Edna, is a story for another day.
Thank you for checking out the Wild Wasteland Season 1, and if you liked it, if you really enjoyed it, make sure to leave a like, make sure to subscribe for more, because that's going to tell me that more people want to see stuff like this, and share it with your friends that might want to see more Storyteller. I think a huge part of this series not getting out there is that not a whole lot of people understand that the Storyteller has been making videos with me, and you can get the word out there. You can help out the channel greatly by doing that. So, thank you again for watching, but a really, really big thanks to my patrons and YouTube channel members. They help keep this boat going, and without them, I really, truly wouldn't be able to do this. So let's thank the biggest supporters right now. Ian Raleigh, Popo Hum, Adam Souza, Fireflare, JP Rivera, Zero Soder, Thomas, Billy Joe Jimbob, Primark Mustard, Daniel Atalano, Marcus Jacobstown, Legendary Angel 94, Spencer Webb, Techie, Ruben Atwood, Phil Starsick, Bill Scott Sheets, and Edgy. Thank you guys so much for everything. I hope to see you on the next one. It has been Mantis.
I gotta testify. Come up in the spot looking extra fly. For the day you die, you gon' touch the sky. You gon' touch the sky, baby girl. Testify. Come up in the spot looking extra fly. For the day you die, you gon'